In 2019, a financial planner in Chicago sat down with a client who earned $220,000 a year. The client was 41. He had a beautiful home, a leased BMW, and a retirement account with $63,000 in it. His net worth was negative, not zero, negative. He had spent 2 decades earning more than most Americans will ever see, and had nothing to show for it on paper. What went wrong? Most people assume wealth is visible. You look at the car, the neighborhood, the job title, and you think you know where someone stands. But that's not how wealth actually works. The markers that signal financial success and the metric that measures it are almost never the same thing. So, which number actually determines your financial class? It's not your salary. It's not your credit score. It's one specific calculation most people have never run on themselves. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. That calculation is net worth. And that's what this video is about. Because if you don't know your real number, you can't know which direction you're moving. And the cost of that blind spot compounds every single year you leave it unchecked. My name is Alex, and if you've ever felt like you're doing everything right, but still falling behind financially, don't skip this one. Because the problem usually isn't your income, it's your measurement. I'm going to show you exactly where you stand on the American wealth ladder right now, and the specific mechanism that determines which direction you move from here. Once you understand how net worth actually works, you'll stop guessing at your financial position and start making decisions from a precise starting point. Most people never run this calculation because nobody showed them which number to look at. Tyler did the same thing, and the diagnosis changed everything. Here's something that almost nobody does. They never actually check. They check their bank balance, they check their credit score, they check whether they can afford the monthly payment, but the one number that actually determines their financial class, most people have never calculated it once in their lives. That number is net worth. And it has almost nothing to do with how much you earn. Meet Jordan. He's 34 years old, a project engineer at a mid-sized construction firm, pulling in $91,000 a year. He lives in a 2-bedroom apartment in a decent part of town, drives a 2023 pickup truck he's still paying off, and puts enough into his 401k, that's his employer retirement account, to get the company match. He orders out more than he should, takes one solid vacation a year, and generally feels like he's doing fine. Not rich, but comfortable. Solidly middle class, or so he thinks. Now let's look at his actual balance sheet. On the asset side, Jordan has $22,000 in his 401k, $9,000 in a savings account, and his truck, which is currently worth about $18,000. That puts his total assets at $49,000. On the liability side, he's carrying $26,000 left on the truck loan and $31,000 in student debt he's been chipping away at for years. Total liabilities, $57,000. $49,000 minus $57,000. Jordan's net worth is negative $8,000. Let that land for a second. Jordan earns nearly twice the median American household income. He contributes to retirement. He hasn't made any dramatic financial mistakes. And yet on paper, he is worth less than nothing. He owns less than he owes. If he liquidated everything today, sold the truck, cashed out the savings, emptied the retirement account, he would still be in the red. This is not a rare situation. This is actually the norm. Currently, roughly 1 in 3 American households under 40 carries a negative or near zero net worth. Even among those earning above the median income, the money flows in steadily. It flows right back out to service debt, cover lifestyle costs, and fund obligations that were signed years ago. The paycheck arrives, and it's already spent before it clears. And here's the part worth sitting with. Jordan has been earning $91,000 a year for 3 years at this job. Before that, he was making $68,000. Over the past 6 years, he has generated somewhere in the neighborhood of $470,000 in gross income. His net worth is negative $8,000. That means for every dollar that came in, essentially none of it stayed. It moved through him to landlords, to lenders, to car dealerships, to subscription services, to restaurants, and it kept moving. That is not a budgeting problem. It is a measurement problem. Jordan has never sat down and calculated this number. So he has been navigating his financial life using the wrong instrument entirely, like trying to find your location using a compass, when what you actually need is a map. The formula itself is not complicated. Net worth equals everything you own. Your assets, things like savings, retirement accounts, property, investments, minus everything you owe, your liabilities, things like mortgages, car loans, student debt, and credit card balances. One calculation, one number. And that number is the only one that actually tells you where you stand. Not your salary, not your apartment, not the truck in the parking lot. So where does Jordan actually stand? Bottom 25% of American households by net worth. Not because he is irresponsible, not because he earns too little, but because the metric he's been ignoring is the only one that counts. And Jordan's story raises an obvious next question. If that's the bottom, what does the rest of the ladder look like? Because most people have a rough sense that wealth exists on a spectrum. They just have no idea where the thresholds actually fall, what separates one bracket from the next, or what it actually takes to climb. That's exactly what the wealth ladder shows. And the structure of it is not what most people expect. Most people assume the problem is spending too much. Cut the subscriptions, skip the vacation, stop eating out. And look, those things aren't wrong exactly, but they're treating a symptom while the actual disease runs untouched underneath. The reason most people stay stuck isn't a lack of discipline. It's three specific forces working simultaneously, and each one feels completely rational from the inside. The first is lifestyle inflation. Every time income goes up, expenses follow. Not dramatically, not recklessly, just quietly. Jordan gets a raise and moves to a slightly nicer apartment. He upgrades his phone. He starts buying better wine. None of it feels excessive in the moment. Each decision seems reasonable, even earned. But the cumulative effect is that the gap between what comes in and what stays never widens. The raise gets absorbed before it can compound. This happens at every income level. It is just as common at $90,000 a year as it is at $200,000. The paycheck grows. The lifestyle grows with it. The net worth barely moves. The second force is debt normalization. Car loans, student debt, credit card balances. These get mentally filed away as fixed features of adult life, rather than as an active drag on wealth. Most people aren't thinking about the total balance. They're thinking about whether they can cover the monthly payment. And if they can cover it, it feels manageable. It feels fine. What it actually is a claim on future income. Every dollar committed to a minimum payment is a dollar that cannot compound. Currently, the average American household carries just over $100,000 in total debt, excluding mortgage. That number has been climbing steadily, and most of the people carrying it aren't losing sleep over it because the payments fit inside the budget. That's exactly how the trap works. The third force is the visible wealth illusion. The apartment, the truck, the clothes, the vacations posted online. These signal financial health to everyone around you, and more importantly, to yourself. When the external picture looks like success, it is genuinely difficult to feel like something is wrong. Jordan looks at his life and sees a person who is doing reasonably well. The mirror confirms it. His colleagues confirm it. The problem is that none of those signals is connected to the number that actually matters. You can construct a convincing picture of financial stability while sitting at a negative net worth, and millions of people are doing exactly that right now. Here is what makes this particularly sharp. Jordan has earned roughly $470,000 over the past 6 years. His net worth is negative $8,000. That means the gap between what flowed through his hands and what remains is nearly $500,000. It didn't vanish. It went somewhere specific, to lenders, to landlords, to recurring costs that renewed automatically, to lifestyle upgrades that felt like rewards. Each destination made sense at the time. The total is staggering. And this is not a Jordan problem. This year, the Federal Reserve data shows that the median net worth for households under 35 cites at around $39,000, in a country where the average household in that age group has earned well over $500,000 in cumulative income by that point. The math only adds up one way. Most of the money is leaving. Very little is staying. Now you might be thinking, okay, so the system is rigged against saving. What's actually possible? That depends entirely on where you are starting from. And that requires understanding not just the trap, but the full structure of where each level of wealth actually begins and ends. Because once you see the wealth ladder laid out in real numbers, bracket by bracket, threshold by threshold, the path forward stops feeling abstract. It becomes a specific distance between two specific points. And distances, unlike feelings, can be measured. And anything that can be measured can be closed. Nobody tells you where the lines are. That's part of the problem. You grow up hearing lower class, middle class, upper class, as if those are self evident categories with obvious borders. They're not. Most people have never seen the actual thresholds. They just guess based on how their life feels relative to the people around them. And that guess is almost always wrong because the people around you are probably in the same bracket, making the same guess, using the same broken compass. So let's put the real numbers on the table. This is adjusted 2026 data from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, the most comprehensive household wealth study conducted in the United States. These are not estimates. This is what the balance sheets of American households actually show. The bottom 25% is a net worth below $23,000. This is where Jordan currently sits at negative $8,000. What's worth understanding about this bracket is that negative net worth isn't a sign of recklessness. It's a sign that obligations got ahead of assets, which happens quietly and gradually, exactly the way the previous section described. Cross $23,000 and you enter the lower middle class, which runs up to $179,000 in net worth. The primary engine that moves people into this bracket is buying a home. Most of the wealth here is locked in home equity, illiquid, inaccessible without selling or borrowing against the property. Liquid savings and retirement balances in this range are thin. Consider a household sitting at $140,000 in net worth. On paper, that sounds stable. Strip out the home equity, and they might have $12,000 in accessible savings, one serious medical event, one unexpected job loss, and they are making decisions that set them back years. Progress, but fragile. The national median sits at $179,000. Half of American households have more. Half have less. When people hear that number, they tend to think the average American is doing reasonably well. Here's the reality check. Remove home equity from that median household and the liquid assets, the cash actually available for an emergency, drop to somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000. That household is still fundamentally dependent on next month's paycheck. The net worth looks okay. The financial cushion underneath it does not. The upper middle class runs from $179,000 to $610,000. And this is where something structurally important happens. Home equity is still present, but intentional investing has begun. Retirement accounts are being maximized. Taxable investment accounts start appearing. The shift is from accidental wealth building, equity that accumulates passively as a mortgage gets paid down, to deliberate wealth building, where money is being directed into assets that compound. That distinction matters more than the dollar amount. It means the household has crossed from reactive to strategic. The compounding engine is running. The top 25% starts at $610,000 and runs to $1.72 million. This is the inversion point. At this level, investments carry roughly 75% of net worth. Home equity drops to around 25%. The portfolio is doing the heavy lifting that the paycheck used to do. Wealth is no longer something that happens slowly in the background. It is accelerating on its own. And then the top 10%, beginning at $1.72 million. A household at this threshold, earning a conservative 7% annual return on invested assets, generates approximately $120,000 a year without working an additional hour. The portfolio has functionally replaced the paycheck as the primary income source. That is not just a different amount of money. It is a different relationship with time, with risk, with choice. Now, here is where most people make a critical error when looking at these numbers. They compare themselves to the national figures and stop there. But the bracket you belong in depends not just on your net worth, it depends heavily on your age. And when you factor that in, the picture shifts in ways that are genuinely uncomfortable to sit with. That's exactly what the age factor reveals. Here's a question worth sitting with. Is a 34-year-old with a net worth of $50,000 ahead or behind? The honest answer is, it depends entirely on who you're comparing them to. And most people never ask that follow-up question. They see a number, they feel good or bad about it, and they move on. But a number without context isn't a measurement. It's just a number. This is where the age factor changes everything. The Federal Reserve doesn't just publish a single national median and call it done. It breaks the data down by age group, and that breakdown is where the picture gets significantly sharper. And for a lot of people, significantly more uncomfortable. Here's what the current data actually shows. For households under 35, the median net worth is $39,000. That means if you're in your late 20s or early 30s and you have $39,000 in net worth, you are sitting exactly at the midpoint for your age group. Half your peers have more, half have less. You are precisely average. That number jumps to $136,000 for households between 35 and 44, then $247,000 for the 45 to 54 bracket, and $365,000 for households between 55 and 64, right at the edge of retirement. The progression makes intuitive sense. Careers mature, incomes rise, mortgages get paid down, retirement accounts compound over decades. Wealth builds naturally with time, assuming the underlying behaviors are in place. The math rewards patience. That part is not surprising. What is surprising is how dramatically your ranking can shift once you apply the age lens. Think about someone with a net worth of $80,000. Against the full national picture, that puts them comfortably above the bottom 25% threshold. They might feel reasonably okay about that. But if that person is 29 years old, $80,000 puts them well above the under 35 median of $39,000. They're actually doing quite well for their age. Now take that same $80,000 and attach it to a 52-year-old. The median for their bracket is $247,000. Suddenly that number tells a completely different story, one that requires immediate attention, not quiet satisfaction. Same number, opposite implications. That's why the national median alone is almost useless as a personal benchmark. Now let's bring this back to Jordan. Against the full country, Jordan's negative $8,000 net worth places him in the bottom 25% of all American households. That's the diagnosis we landed on earlier. But compare him to his actual peer group, households under 35, where the median is $39,000, and the gap gets wider, not narrower. Jordan is at negative $8,000. His age group median is $39,000. The distance between those two numbers is $47,000. That places him around the 10th percentile for his age. Roughly 90% of households his age have a higher net worth than he does right now. That's not a comfortable number to sit with, and it shouldn't be. But here is the thing. It is an honest one. And an honest number, even an uncomfortable one, is more useful than a vague feeling that things will probably work out. Jordan's position is not permanent. It is a starting coordinate. The under 35 window is actually one of the highest leverage periods in a person's financial life, precisely because time is the one asset that compounds everything else. A dollar invested at 34 has 20 to 30 years to grow before retirement. A dollar invested at 54 has 10. The math on that difference is not subtle. The question is what Jordan actually does from here, because staying at negative 8,000 is a choice, even if it doesn't feel like one. Coasting, getting intentional, or getting aggressive, each path produces a radically different outcome over the next 20 years. And the gap between those three paths forward is almost impossible to overstate. 20 years is a long time. It's also not that long. Jordan is 34 today. By the time he's 54, his kids, if he has them, will be grown. His career will be in its final chapter. The decisions that feel small and deferrable right now will have already been made, one way or another. The question isn't whether something happens over the next 20 years. Something always happens. The question is which of the three very different versions of Jordan shows up at the other end. All three start at the same place. Negative $8,000. Today, path 1 is coasting. Jordan doesn't make any dramatic decisions. He keeps contributing 2% to his 401k to get the company match. He pays the minimums on his student loans and his truck. He gets modest raises over the years and spends them the way he's been spending everything else. A slightly nicer apartment here, a better vacation there. Nothing reckless, just drift. By age 54, his net worth reaches approximately $120,000. That sounds like progress. And in absolute terms, it is. He moved from negative 8,000 to positive 120,000 over 2 decades. But remember the benchmark. The median net worth for a 54-year-old household is currently $247,000. After 20 years of steady income, Jordan is still dangerously below average for his age. He didn't fall behind because of bad luck. He fell behind because lifestyle inflation and minimum payments ran uninterrupted for 2 decades, and compounding never got the chance to work in his favor. That's not drift. That's the mathematical output of 3 forces left completely unchecked. Path 2 is getting intentional. Jordan makes two decisions. First, he cuts discretionary spending by $700 a month. Not dramatically, no radical lifestyle overhaul, just an honest look at where the money is going and a few deliberate redirects. That $700 goes straight to his student loans. Aggressively. They're cleared in 4 years. The moment they're gone, he doesn't lifestyle inflate to fill the gap. He redirects that exact same $700 into a low-cost index fund every single month. He doesn't touch it. By age 54, combining his investment portfolio with modest home equity from a property he purchased in his late 30s, Jordan's net worth stands at approximately $500,000. Two decisions, a spending reduction and a debt elimination sequence, moved him from the bottom 25% into the upper middle class. He crossed 2 full brackets on the wealth ladder without a windfall, without an inheritance, without a dramatic income spike, just redirection and time. Path 3 is getting aggressive. Jordan decides the gap between his current position and where he wants to be is too wide to close on spending cuts alone. So he works to grow his income, develops a specialized skill set, targets a senior role, and moves his salary from $91,000 to $115,000 over 3 years. Crucially, he keeps his expenses exactly where they are. The additional income doesn't get absorbed into the lifestyle. It gets invested. He's now putting $1,500 a month into the market. He also buys a small duplex, lives in one unit, and rents the other. The rental income covers most of the mortgage. His housing cost drops. His equity builds. By age 54, Jordan's net worth is approximately $1 million. He crossed from the bottom 25% into the top 25% in a single generation. No trust fund, no lottery ticket, no unusually fortunate timing. Just a higher income held deliberately flat against stable expenses, a real estate position that paid for itself, and 20 years of compounding running uninterrupted. Now lay all three side by side. Same person. Same starting point of negative $8,000 today. 20 years later, $120,000, $500,000, or $1 million. The difference between coasting and getting aggressive is $880,000. That is not a rounding error. That is the entire game. Your trajectory matters more than your current position. That is not a motivational line. It is arithmetic. And the only way to choose a trajectory is to know your real starting point. Which brings us to the only question that actually matters now. Here's what this all comes down to. Your financial class is not determined by your salary, your apartment, or the car in your driveway. It is determined by one number, assets minus liabilities, measured against every other household your age doing the same calculation. Most people have never run it. That's not a moral failure. It's just that nobody told them which number to look at. A few things are worth carrying forward. Lifestyle inflation is automatic. Intentionality is not. The wealth ladder shifts from equity-driven to investment-driven at a specific threshold, and crossing it requires a deliberate behavioral change, not just a raise. Compounding time is the only resource that cannot be recovered once it's gone. And your trajectory, right now, is worth more than your current position. So here's the only thing that actually matters after watching this. Calculate your net worth this week. Assets minus liabilities. One number, written down. Then find the Federal Reserve age bracket median for your group and measure the gap. That gap is not a verdict. It is a starting coordinate. Your income tells you what you earn. Your net worth tells you what you've built. Those two numbers are almost never the same, and understanding why they diverge is where the real work begins.